Hi class, this is Module 1, Lecture 1 for Smart PR Measurement. I'm Brenda Sheridan, your instructor. Just a general reminder that if you have any questions throughout the class during the 4 weeks, feel free to email me. My email was provided in the overview in the beginning of the class module on Canvas, and I hope you really enjoy the class. So all of us have been communicators their whole entire life. We probably don't even realize it, but communication is really just about getting out your message. And we've done that from early childhood through our adult life. We've always been able to communicate our wants and needs. And it's really as simple as communicating our wants and needs to an audience that we deem is appropriate for our message, then having that audience make a decision or a call to action to help us address our wants and needs. And even as a child, we were able to measure, did our message get across clearly to our audience? For example, when you're a child, if you want something to drink, you communicate that. Then did we get the drink from our parents, our grandparents, or our sibling, or not? And we measure that by the goal of having that drink. Well, it's no different in the world that we live in today. So as communicators, as business people, people in the military, we have messages we communicate, then we communicate to that audience, then we figure out or measure, did that message work? And that's what we're going to be doing in this class. So we're going to talk about bad measurement. So again, using the example of a child, did we get that drink or that lollipop or that cookie? Well, it was easier when we were children because the outcome would be actually the lollipop or drink. But as adults, and we look at measurement, we don't want to just track not just the outcomes, and we want to track everything, and we want to do it consistently, and we want to look at different types of measurements. So did the child get the cookie and make them happy? What kind was the cookie? All these different things. So bad measurement is done inconsistently. It only tracks the impressions and not the outcomes, and it only looks at one type of measurement. Good measurement is what we're looking for, and it tracks what's important. We got the goal, we got the cookie, and we're happy. And it's done consistently. Oh, mom will give me a cookie if I cry. And we connect it to business KPIs, which some of you may know as key performance indicators, which we'll look at the definition of that next. And it tracks outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. So looking at KPIs, that's a word that many business people and many communicators use. A performance indicator or a key performance indicator, KPI, is a type of a performance measurement. KPIs evaluate the success of an organization or of a particular activity, such as a project, program, product, or other initiative which it engages. And that's from Wikipedia just a little bit ago. So basically, to review, we are going to, in this class, look at different types of communication strategies. We're going to look at, were they successful? Did they reach their intended audience? Did the audience that was specifically directed the communication from take an action? Was the action what you wanted? Then we'll go back and we'll measure it, and we'll look at this over and over again, because we don't want to, one campaign is not deemed successful, it's over and over. And then we want to make sure that our campaigns are solid, and we want to make sure that they're directed to the right audience and that the call to action is answered. And then we want to measure that, and we want to keep measuring that. And that's what's really important about benchmarking as well. So in this class, we'll talk about 6 keys to the measurement world. You may recognize these terms: who, what, when, where, and why, and how. They're very familiar if you're a journalist. This is how we write our stories. We'll start off with who, which I think is one of the easiest but probably the most overlooked. So as communicators and business people, and if you're in the military, you're trying to get your message across, to who? To the media, to your customers, to your partners, to alumni if you're working in higher ed, to your employees, internal communications, to students, to clients, to leaders, to funders, to investors. I'm sure you can add another 20 or 30 onto that list, and that's really important that you know who your audience is. What are you measuring? So again, as we start our campaign, our communication campaign, who does it go to? Now what are we going to measure? Increase exposure? Are we trying to educate our audience on a new policy? Are we trying to improve positioning? Are we trying to increase mind share? How about the obvious one? Increase sales, increase enrollment, um, increase new members, obtain new members, supporters, raise money, raise awareness for mission. I think you can think of many different communication political campaigns that have done all of these, and maybe not done them well, but at least tried to get across a political position. So what has three different levels? Level one are the outputs. So what are the tangible results, the physical and direct results of your work? So does your campaign, your media campaign, your communication campaign produce media clips? Does it produce brochures, fact sheets, or print items, print ads? How about does your campaign produce speaking engagements? So if you're in a political world, you put out a position paper, or sometimes they call it a white paper in higher ed, then from that, reporters call and they want to entice or work with your faculty member or your politician for a speaking engagement, or a quoted mention in the New York Times or Washington Post. So these are the outputs. These are the things that you can go to your boss with and say, hey, I did this campaign, it was directed at this audience. These are the media clips that we got. These are the specific positioning we got, and what do we do with that next? Well, these are measurable outputs and these are good. Outtakes. Outtakes are what are the target audience takes away from your program. So these are, the call to actions also. Messaging, understanding, perceptions generated by your outputs. So these are, once again, measurable items that we can go back to your boss with. Outcomes. Okay, these are the call to action, just like we talked about a second ago. Quantifiable changes that occur at the end of the result of your program. So did you change attitudes? Did you change opinions? Did you get someone to engage? And when we think about social media, it's all about engagement, right? It's not about counting the number of likes. It's really about, did your tweet or your LinkedIn post get someone to engage? Even if they're engaging negatively, negative engagement is, it's better than being ignored and no engagement. And we can talk later in the class about what to do about negative engagement. Or did it get your audience to change its behavior? And the best part would be, your audience do a change action? Did they act now and make a change? Did they come over to your side of a position? Did they vote on a specific piece of legislation? Did they enroll in a class? Did they, join the gym? So when we think about measuring things, we think we should set a timeline. So we're going to measure it for one academic year or one specific campaign, or we're going to measure, how many people do we get to join the gym in a period between Christmas and New Year's. These different time frames. And we should benchmark. So when you come into a job and you're a communications person or a business person, or really any type of job has communications, and it's expected to be able to communicate clearly your message, you should benchmark. So when I came in this job, this is how many social media followers we had. This is our engagement level. This is what our website looked like. This is our number of new visitors to the website. We want to benchmark, and this will help you with your upcoming reviews, or if you're allowed to purchase a specific software package that helps you with your social media or communication strategies, then you could say, well, this was worth it. I benchmarked it before we had the tool, and this is what our results were, and this is the results after. Then comparing past performance and other to major competitors. So who are your major competitors? What are they doing? What kind of campaigns are they running? These are all really, really important aspects of measurement. And where do we measure? On our social media channels. We measure what the media hits, the different platforms and dashboards that we can buy or purchase or rent or use as free of cost. Like Hootsuite is a great measurement platform that measures our social media. And so Hootsuite has a free part you can use, and also has one that's paid. I use the paid portion of it, and then I get the metrics on it, so I can look and see what are the engagements levels on each social media platform based on a specific campaign. We also use Meltwater, which is a media placement tool. It helps us place our faculty members' positions, and we count media placements on that. And so every type of industry has different benchmarks and different dashboards and platforms. You just have to figure out what is best for your specific communication effort and what kind of messaging you're trying to get out. Why do we measure? Well, this is an example this is Google Analytics, looking at somebody's website from January 1st through January 31st, and they're looking at, new visitors. So the new visitors they had to the website during this period of time was about 80%, and return visitors is 21%. This is excellent work. But furthermore, what you can look at is you can look, and if you see on the screen that right before January 8th, Maybe they had a campaign they rolled out and they could see a spike in the visitors during that time versus January 15th, where it's a little bit lower. Like, you can go back and actually look at your social media strategy, your communication strategy, your business strategy, and say, like, what happened January 15th or January 29th? Conversely, what happened like between January 22nd and the 29th? What kind of campaigns were we running during that time that we saw that spike? So these are some tools. Why do we measure? Because we want to get more people to our website, because the website is a marketing tool. How do we measure? Okay, this is where, I think people get to this point and they're like, okay, now what do we do? Because this is a lot of work. Measuring is hard work, but it's not something that cannot be done. Of course it can be done, and it can be done cheaply. It doesn't have to be expensive. And once you decide how you're going to measure and you get that pattern down and you educate your coworkers, it's something that should be done on a continuing basis. So how do we measure? Website data, Google Analytics, Web Analytics, media analytics, like I just talked about, from getting it from Hootsuite, getting it from Meltwater or Sison, which is also another media placement service you can purchase. It also has a free component. Believe it or not, phone surveys, picking up the phone and calling your clients. Hey, what did you think about that campaign? Or maybe when they're on campus or at your business, hey, take a second and fill out this survey for us. Paper surveys, that's old school, but they do work. Online surveys, using things like SurveyMonkey. Or if you want to look at, you send out these e-blasts to your customers, you can measure that through TargetX or Salesforce. Those are CRMs, customer relation management systems, that are used in sales, all kinds of sales jobs. They're using all kinds of business jobs. We use them in higher ed, and looking at the results of your e-blast. Did the e-blast get to your intended audience? Did they open it? And what did they do from that? And then looking at that historically, like when we send e-blasts out in the month of February, it doesn't yield the type of engagement that we want, versus when we send them out in June, it does. Dedicated URLs, vanity URLs. So if you have somebody coming to buy something and you're sending a e-blast to a direct audience, a specific audience, you do a specific URL. For example, we do it a lot with conferences. So if we go to a conference, we use the name of the conference, like NJLA stands for New Jersey Library Association, and we may send out an email to just that audience, and we have the URL within the e-blast to track them to see if they're going to come to an event. And it might be, njla.rutgers.edu, and then we have them click on it and register for an event, and then we can track those people making a specific action, and we can see, like, hey, that e-blast or that communication campaign for that event was very successful. So that's how we measure. In this class, the first assignment is going to be a SWOT on a company or organization that you're familiar with or maybe not familiar with. We're going to try to use that same company and organization throughout the class, throughout the 4 weeks, so keep that in mind. So a SWOT, I'm sure a lot of you have done this before. We're looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from the internal and external perspective. And you can look through this slide whenever you get to that in your work for this week. So we want to do a SWOT. That's the assignment for this week, and look at people's communications, the organization's communication strategy, and then outline the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and their measurement as well. How do we get started on this? Well, so for some of you, you may want to use your own company or organization, maybe one you work for, maybe when you volunteer at. Of course, you will look online to gather documents as well to see their communication strategy, their social media strategy, their business strategy. And so search engines, of course, are a great way to do that. It's probably nothing that you already know. I'm sure it's that you already know. Research tools. We talked about SurveyMonkey, looking at surveys. We also talked about looking at social media. You can do a search on Twitter to see what people are saying about your company or organization. You can, in the competitors as well, you can add an RSS reader feed or email to pull in search results, send right directly to your email. So looking at this first module, we looked at what is communication, who are the audiences we're communicating to, how are we communicating that message, what does the message entail, what do you want the audience to do, was it successful, and then afterwards, how do we measure it, why is that important, Where do we go to find the information to measure? When do we actually do the measuring? What specific time period? How do we benchmark it? What are we measuring? And of course, who is the audience? So this is what I call this slide from snapshot to strategy.